Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everyone to the Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting of 12 September 2024. Welcome to any members of the public watching the meeting on Council's YouTube. The emergency procedures, probably everyone in this room is very familiar with them, but they're on the screen. Please turn your cell phones to silent if you haven't already. And I'd invite you to join with me in our karakia, which is on the screen. Mino tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ihi aki ana ti atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Now, I've received an apology from Councillor Barrett for lateness, and I think quite possibly Councillor Tupou, who had hoped to get here on Zoom, is also struggling. So I will move those two apologies. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Stellinger, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. We have one public speaker, a name very familiar to us. Welcome, Dr. Tripp, and you're speaking to item 5, the Cross Valley Link objectives. And I think you have a presentation for us as well.
On the right, on behalf of the Hutt Cycle Network. Our guiding light here should be your integrated transport strategy, the forward of which says, your feedback has made it loud and clear that our people and environment need to be front and centre of Lower Hutt's transport network, and all modes, cycling, walking, driving and public transport, need to be truly integrated so that we can all move around efficiently with lower environmental impact. Your climate change pathway notes rapidly reducing our transport-related emissions is the only way you have any hope of achieving your climate objectives. So how does the Cross Valley Link stack up? This is the data from the 2021 business case. Cars dramatically increase, trivial change in bikes, and you don't even model walking in public transport. So this project significantly increases CO2 emissions at a time that this council has committed to make dramatic cuts. Further, the economic benefits are only really about reducing travel time delay. Sadly, the benefits for cycling and walking are trivial. But note, the value of the resilience component is very small. This is a project about congestion, not resilience. We also need to consider adaptation to sea level rise. This is a Greater Wellington Regional Council map under increasingly optimistic assumptions. Both the Cross Valley Link and the communities it connects will be inundated. The only economic activity that may remain viable in Seaview and Gracefield is the marina. 10 to 15,000 of your people will be homeless. So the Cross Valley Link increases CO2 emissions, will therefore make climate change worse, and services suburbs that are therefore increasingly likely to be inundated. In terms of your problem statements, they talk of resilience, but your economic modelling shows it adds little to resilience. They talk of reducing travel delays, which I accept are currently awful, but it does not consider viable alternatives. If you were to meet your mode shift objectives, the Esplanade would be free-flowing without any need for an incredibly expensive Cross Valley Link. And they do not talk about the real problems with our transport system that you articulated well in your integrated transport strategy. Your original Cross Valley Link focused on a package of measures including modal choice. That's gone. We're now just building a road for more cars for trivial impact on resilience. This is a project from the 1970s which says, we have congestion, the only answer is to build an even bigger road. Been there, done that, it didn't work. This is not a time for the same tired thinking or resigned defeat to a government hell-bent on tar sealing everything in sight. Please could you try, or even pretend to try, to do something fit for the 21st century. I would urge you to take an extra week to rethink these objectives before you lock them down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Councillors, any questions for Dr. Tripp? Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you, David. I'm just a quick photo of your last slide. I don't know if we can get back it up. because I assume these are your suggestions about changes that we could make. And I just wanted to ask about the housing one. You talk about managed retreat in this area, not more housing. Is it your understanding that the 3,500 homes that are discussed there are homes in Petone and Seaview Gracefield area?
No, but they are an objective of this project, and I'm wondering what this project is seeking, which homes, where are we building these homes that the Cross Valley Link is going to help them? I accept Wainuiomata as an obvious candidate. Much of this road and its justification are about, in terms of your objectives, are about servicing Seaview and Gracefield. So my concern here is that your objectives, your problem statements and your objectives, if you build just another really big road, will be a tick. That these problem statements and objectives don't give voice to your community's wishes that we do something different, something better with the way we do transport.
Yeah, so if the housing's in Wainuiomata, and it may be that that housing is needed for managed retreat.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
This road is a connection to Wainuiomata
Yes,
as well,
it is.
not just to Seaview.
Well, if it itself is above sea level, which it's not, and if that's the best connection to Wainuiomata, and that's a very different question to what has been proposed in the rationale and the modelling around the Cross Valley Link.
Yeah.
So I don't think your problem statements or these objectives actually fit with the problems that you're trying to solve in the future. It's about building a road because we've been going to do this for a long time.
Thank you. And you mentioned congestion, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but elsewhere in our paper there's talk about congestion charging. And I just wondered if your cycling community had a view on congestion charging as a way of reducing congestion on our roads as well, hopefully making them safer for cyclists and other users of the roads.
A quick answer to a complex question. We need a whole lot of carrots and sticks to change our behaviour, which has become firmly entrenched in the car's the only choice. That's about our infrastructure, that's about how much you pay for different options, that's about how we teach our kids, that's about a whole suite of things, of which congestion charging is very important.
Any further questions? I'll try one. David, does your view of Cross Valley Link change at all if, under the business case that is there's still to be done, there is provision for active transport and bus priority lanes and that kind of thing along that route?
Very much so, because, I mean, I don't think a new road is going to help us. I can read the writing on the wall. I'm not that dumb. What we need to do if we're to achieve our integrated transport strategy aims is to think carefully from the start about making sure that we build components of our transport system in a carefully integrated way. I don't see any leverage in your problem statements or objectives which enable those aspirations to survive what I know is coming as you engage with NZTA.
Thank you very much. No further questions?
Thank you very much for your
Thanks
time.
for giving up your time, David, for us. Okay, moving now to conflict of interest declarations. Does anyone have a conflict of interest, David? Okay. Happily enough, because David is still in the room, we'll move to item 5 on the agenda, which is Cross Valley Connections objectives, I should say. Page 10 of the agenda, slip of the tongue. And I'd invite Eddie Anand, Head of Sydney Delivery, to speak to the item. Eddie, we've definitely read your report. You may want to highlight things to us.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. As you noted in the report, the work we have done is built on the 2021 program business case objectives, which were done some time ago, and we wanted to make sure that that there is a refresh of those investment objectives to align with the new government policy statement, but also to align with the new council strategy around integrated transport strategy, as well as special plans and other work council have done. So the work was done together with across the council to make sure that brings the Hutt City Council view to the objectives. I have to just in response to David's queries, we do their objectives are broad and are across the whole transport system. So if you look at the objectives, the problem statements, the third problem statement talks about limiting modal choice as one of the problems our network is facing. So we are across public transport, walking, cycling, along with looking at other options as well. So it does goes into multimodal transport options. As well as the investment objectives we have come up with, talks about the transport system and the transport links. They do not talks about focus on one particular car use or a private motor vehicle use. So they are across multimodal as a transport system as a whole. In my view, the investment objectives are broad enough and fit for purpose to respond to David's queries, as well as to ensure that we are not sort of narrowing into one particular mode of transport right from the start. We are broadening our review of all modes and to ensure that they are fit for purpose for future use. So that includes improvements to public transport, improvements to walking and cycling, considering all alternatives along with New Cross Valley Connection Link Road as well. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. I will have some suggested changes as well, Chair, a bit later on, but I just wanted to question in paragraph 4, it says the CVC problems and statements and objectives have been updated to reflect changes in council policies since 2021. I just wondered what policies have we changed since 2021 that are reflected in these objectives?
So we looked at the new integrated transport strategy. So that's come through. The new special plan talks about housing areas. We want to make sure there's a link to that. Obviously, there's work going on in terms of the city strategy work. So it was timely for us to bring our team together across the whole council to make sure that the objectives do reflect the current state of play at Hutt City Council rather than what was it back in 2021.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. And also, I think from the briefing and kind of just my own read of the way this information is presented, has it also been refreshed partly to address the government's objectives for transport and for this particular project?
That's correct, yeah. So it talks about not only alignment with Hutt City's the policies and strategies, but also the government policy statement 2024.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any more questions, but I will have a couple of suggested amendments.
I've got Councillor Dellinger and then Councillor Dyer.
Yes, Eddie, I was just interested in the comment by Dr. Tripp regarding the resilience and how he didn't see it adding much. And I guess I hadn't really turned my own mind to the modelling maps we've seen of sea level rise and how this was still in that area, that relatively low-lying area. So is that something that's minds have been turned to at this stage, given the scale of the investment envisaged?
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, that's correct. I think we have defined resilience as one of the biggest challenges. If you see the first two the first two problem statements specifically talks about wider resilience issues around high probability, low probability, high impact events, as well as high probability, low impact events. So, and we have kept the resilience of the transport network and the area specifically at a higher level so that we can address them through the business case. We have shown that how important this area is in terms of the Seaview industrial area, the opportunities for the future, but also absolutely acknowledges the resilience challenges it faces in terms of climate change. So it is right on the forefront of our mind that these will be addressed through the business case process. And there is a wider piece of work going on in central government as well around resilience, how central government is going to respond to these resilience challenges and how councils will respond as well. So we'll bring all that updated information as well in the business case along with any new modelling work which has been done.
Yeah, my question was page 14, where it's talking about the GDP and job figures. Just wondering if you could, I do think we probably, through our discussions, need to fix the wording a bit, but just wondering if you could explain what the what the text is trying to say. So it currently says support access to 20% of Lower Hutt GDP and 18% of jobs. And then it says support access to Gracefield that provides 13% of GDP and 12% of jobs in Lower Hutt. So my reading is like they're almost the same thing. 18% of jobs in Lower Hutt or 12% of jobs in Lower Hutt, two different figures trying to say the same thing. It's just, to me, not really clear what it's trying to say.
We can have another look at that. I think that we're just trying to sort of show that the focus of the jobs within the Lower Hutt on its own, and then specifically in the Seaview area. But I think I get your point that there is two different percentages provided around Lower Hutt GDP and 18% of the jobs and 12% of the jobs. So I'll go back and clarify that here. Thanks.
Thanks, Eddie. My question, we've got a government that's got a government policy statement and an NLTP that's just been released, and they've got a particular view about cycling and active transport that we know well, and they seem lukewarm, shall we use that word, about public transport as well. We're talking about a possible joint business case with Waka Kotahi to progress this CVL. If I'm hearing you correctly, though, despite that, that business case will look at opportunities, can look at opportunities for active transport, public transport, sea level rise, resilience, that kind of thing. It will take that kind of thing in.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely correct. I think we will look at all possible options and all issues on the table. Whether some of the outcomes aligned with government policy statement is probably something we will address at the end of the business case around their probability of seeking any NZTA subsidy or government subsidy in terms of implementation. But we will be considering all modes. We'll be considering all resilience options and making sure the business case is a thorough business case. And at the end, if there is a alignment challenge with GPS, then we will communicate that back to the council.
Thank you. Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Once all this work's been done, because it has been going on for a few years now, what is the predicted finish time of a project like this?
I can only give my opinion because we haven't yet had conversation with NZTA. If the project, it usually takes a year for a business case to finish, and then if you have to go through a consenting process through normal channels, it could be a couple of years, and then if there's private properties impacted, so that prolongs that process. My personal view is that if the project is in the fast track consented process, then that timeline could be substantially reduced. But that's something to be considered as part of the next business case and working with NZTA. So broadly, a year for business case, a couple of years for consenting before we get into the pre-implementation phase, which is design and then construction. So.
Follow on from that, Chair, is when you go to the fast tracking options, is that something that the public get to have a say on for consultation or for feedback? Or is it out of our hands?
I can comment on that at the moment because I haven't looked at the criteria, but I know there is a list of projects to be considered for fast track consenting. So I need to go back and check whether this is part of that, and if it is, what's the process that the government's going to follow.
Okay, the recommendations are that we receive and note this report. We approve the updated problem statement attached as Appendix 1 with those editorial changes that he's going to check out to do with GDP. We approve the updated cross-valley connections objectives. We note that these objectives set out Council's strategic outcomes sought by the CVC Programme of Works. We note that the cross-valley link forms part of the CVC Programme of Works, and we note that following Council approval, Council officers will meet with NZTA Waka Kotahi to develop the next steps for delivery as part of the P2G and CVL business case. So I'll move those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? And I'm aware that Councillor Mitchell may have some amendments. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lewis. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to receive any feedback on this, Chair, if you want them to be amendments or just to note feedback on it, but I do have some to provide.
Let's hear what your thoughts are.
I'm just going to ask Vanessa, I just sent you an email, Vanessa, with a clean copy of this objective thing. This one was a screenshot from the briefing we had, and I don't know if it's changed since then, but hopefully not. But just to speak to the point that was made in public comment, and I completely agree that we need to reflect our own integrated transport strategy in this, not just in this, but primarily in this. If we're meeting with Waka Kotahi to talk about objectives, they will bring the government's objectives to the table. I think we need to bring our own objectives to the table quite clearly. So I'm going to mention a few things now. I don't know if anyone wants to try and capture them. Very happy to email them through afterwards as well. I took a look at our ITS and the guiding principles and the focus areas and encourage everybody else to do the same. A few things I thought really important to include here. First and foremost, an objective for mode shift to decrease congestion and emissions. Secondly, one thing that's really prominent in the ITS is to improve and not undermine the appeal of public and active transport. And those two, I don't know where these headings came from. Those two could probably go in the first column, or it might just justify their own column actually, because they're about transport choices, and that's not really one of the headings up there. And there's been talk of resilience as well. I think that under the resilience heading, and there was a point well made, that this project should add to and not compromise resilience of surrounding areas. It was mentioned that the road itself may be underwater. The road itself could be sitting on a seawall for all we know. It hasn't been designed yet, and the route hasn't been either. So it could be built as a resilience project, much like our pathways around the base have in recent years. Yeah, and I question the increasing business productivity and attractiveness, whether that one should be in the next column over, the economic productivity section. It does say by providing reliable transport, but this is all about reliable transport. I just felt it was a better fit under that economic heading. So just noting that we do have some time on this. This is coming back to council before you have the meeting with Waka Kotahi. Those are a few suggested changes. I'll have a closer look myself before council and encourage other people to do the same.
Councillor Dyer?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, because this is going to full council, that we could share some thoughts now and leave it with officers to then report back to full council with an updated version. We're making quite a good partnership, because I had the suggestion of creating a whole new box that's just all about mode shift and public transport, because for me, I don't see where it fits in there, and absolutely it needs to be a focus of this project. I completely share the thoughts of Councillor Mitchell about we need to bring our views and our objectives from our ITS that we all signed off to the table, because we know they're not going to align with the government. I know you asked officers whether this would, if this can look at mode shift, but it has to look at mode shift. It can't just be a can it do it within the realms of possibilities. It must deliver mode shift, otherwise why are we even bothering with it? So I didn't have all the detailed suggestions like Councillor Mitchell has, but I would like to see another box up there that really is around mode shift and public transport, and completely support the suggestions of Councillor Mitchell and possibly others. But there needs to be some really clear objectives there around these two things. We know when we talk about CVL that it is about mode shift, but if we don't go to the government with a piece of paper that says that, then I can just see what's going to happen.
Eddie, you're nodding your head. Do you think these kinds of things can be incorporated? Well, they can be incorporated in these objectives.
Absolutely. I think we can bring it out, and as requested, I think make a separate objective altogether. It's not a problem. It can be done fairly quickly. Yeah. It currently sits in the first box, but we can sort of daylight it a lot better.
So I'm just wondering, instead of recommendation 3, and we'll need someone to move an amendment along these lines, it's notes the updated Cross Valley Connections objectives. How are we going to progress this? Note that both of the two people who've spoken on potential changes to the objectives sit on the mayor and chairs. Could we finalise those? Yeah, I see the mayor is nodding his head. would someone like to move an amendment that we note the updated as an amendment to recommendation 3, we note the updated cross-valley connections objectives and may make changes to them at the next meeting of the Mayor and Chair's meeting.
I'd be happy to move that, Chair. I'm just noting that it will come back to full council as well, so other people
That's right.
have a chance to have a look at it.
At least that way there'll be something for the full, that
Yeah,
will
an
be in
amended-
front
an
of the full
amended
council
document.
instead of trying to tweak things on
Yeah,
the run at a
absolutely.
full council meeting.
I'm kind of looking at Catherine. Are we allowed to move an amendment that's kind of opposite of what the recommendation is on the table? Or are we just voting it down and moving a new recommendation of exactly what you just said? I know it's kind of semantics, but one currently says approves.
I don't think it's a contrary amendment. It's not a. That's
Okay, I'm happy to second it then.
that's my thoughts on it. And yep, Catherine's nodding her head. Thank goodness. Is there? So you're seconding that, Brady? All right. Well, I'll put that amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please say aye. Against? Declare the amendment carried. That now becomes recommendation 3. So you've got the other recommendations there in front of you with the amended recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you.
I think we skipped discussion there.
Oh,
I did just want to make a further comment that I think actually our integrated transport strategy should also be presented to Kotahi alongside this as a general consideration for them on this project.
Eddie has noted that. Seems like a good idea. Okay, thank you. We're moving now to Three Waters update on page 15 of your agenda. Bruce Hodgson is going to speak to us and may even have an illustration for some of his salient points.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a few updates to the report, and I was just going to also put up a bit of a plan to show where we've got the Eastbourne wastewater rising main and some of the other issues around that. So first of all, in terms of paragraph 10 of the report, the latest that I've heard is that the total cost of the spill is going to be in the order of nearer 2 million than 1. So the reason for that is that the work took a lot longer than had planned with the wet weather, and the trucks were continuing to pump out the sewage and take it round to Seaview. So there's quite a bit of a cost in that. In terms of good news, in terms of water leaks on paragraph 13, on Monday, we came down to 76 leaks. So we are under now the target of 110, which is theoretically around 2 weeks worth of work as it comes in. So 76 leaks that have yet to be attended to. The difficulty is going to be keeping that at that level over the summer period when we know that the number of leaks rises considerably. In terms of the work that's going on at the Seaview wastewater treatment plant, the project there with the biofilter, I can report that the first 3 cells have been completed and we're on to the 4th cell this week. So we're well within the timeline that we have been set by the Regional Council by 1st of November to have completed all of that work. So that is also good news. And under water reform, the draft report has been received and we have provided some feedback to that report. What we'll be doing is there will be a briefing on the 25th of September at which we will go through that report and other matters, and then there will be a full report to Council on the 29th of October. Now, I just want to come back to Days Bay, and I wonder if we could just put up that bit of a plan. Just want to refer to paragraph 12, and just for your information, the situation that I'm reporting in paragraph 12. So there's 3 wastewater lines around here. You can see they're quite close together, all on Marine Parade. The one closest to the sea is the Eastbourne to Seaview wastewater main. So that's taking the untreated wastewater back to Seaview to be processed. The middle one is the main outfall pipe, so that's going south. And the third one, the one that's the closest to Williams Park, is the wastewater main that takes the wastewater from Days Bay, and it takes it up to the pumping station just around the corner in Days Bay where the leak occurred. So this pipe here is the one that is 1915, earthenware and vulnerable. And we've also, the rest of Days Bay is mostly in that era, 1915. So just wanted to point that out. Happy for any questions.
I'm very glad that future work on that earthenware one on the inside is not going to involve us digging up the cycleway that we've just laid. Any questions for Bruce? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, on the Days Bay figure, which I won't repeat, is that a shared services cost, or is this primarily only us?
It is a shared services cost. So just as we contribute to the cost of the wastewater mains that run through Upper Hutt, some of the trunk wastewater mains, Upper Hutt also contributes to the Eastbourne to Seaview.
And these additional maps, they would be on the hook for some of that as well? They would be, are they part of the, would they be funding part of the Eastbourne gravity main that you're talking about as well?
They're not involved with the local Days Bay gravity main. No, that's totally us. They're just dealing with the main Eastbourne to Seaview main that is taking the sewage from Eastbourne back to Seaview to be treated.
Yep. And on the big fix, was any of that to do with the outfall pipe, or was it the infall pipe?
Yes, it was a close connection. So there's valves that joined the main outfall pipe to this particular pipe, and so where it ruptured, we had to close down. Wellington Water had to close down the main outfall pipe to be able to get in there and fix that connection and renew all of that section of pipe from there back to the pumping station.
And so Upper Hutt would be paying for some of that, and like the sucker trucks, they'd be paying for some of that.
They're paying 1/3.
Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm just coming back to the Eastbourne wastewater rising main and the recent issue there. It says that the pipe and valves were corroded in poor condition and failed at 3 points. What length of pipe was replaced as part of the repair work there?
Quite a short length of pipe. So this is a small section, probably under 20 metres or so, that had been not renewed. So we have already started to renew from Days Bay pumping station going north as part of the shared cycleway work. And this little section, which is quite a complicated little area, hadn't been renewed.
Thank you. And you mentioned in terms of the 2 million versus 1 million, that a large part of that additional cost was to do with the time taken and a number of trucks running back and forth. I just wondered if there's going to be any further reporting of this, particularly to the public, or I guess information releases perhaps, if we can be careful to separate out that part of it from the actual hard works, infrastructure works that would be done, that kind of service part of it, just so people can see that that cost was involved in a sadly required extra service.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we will do that. Wellington Water hasn't got a final figure yet, so this is still an estimate. But yes, we are going to be separating out the different parts of the cost of this work, and we can make that available.
Thank you. I have one more question, which was on a different page. On that leaks dashboard, page 22, there's quite an astonishing figure in there about the leaks fixed this year and current estimates that cumulatively these leak repairs are saving over 11 million litres of water per day from leaking into the ground. And that's just in Lower Hutt?
No, I think that's possibly referring to across the 4 metro councils.
Okay, yeah, it's a Hutt City page, that's why I was curious, but it's a huge amount of water. It's equivalent to our largest reservoir up on the eastern hills going into the ground every day. Quite astonishing figure.
Any further, Councillor Stellinger?
Just wondering, Bruce, if you've got any fresh information or thoughts you could share in relation to relations down at Seaview, given all the works that's been going on and, the odour issues during that time and prior. Just for the committee's information, Councillor Dyer and subsequently myself have been to public meetings, just trying to show a elected member's face to the issues there. And there's been a significant increase in the engagement and reporting and so on. How would you rate the tensions and feeling down there at this point in time?
I think they've improved. I think certainly the amount of work that's been undertaken to keep the public, and particularly those groups and individuals that are interested in this situation, updated on a regular basis has been helpful. So as you would be aware, there's a monthly newsletter that's going out, but there's also any works that are going on down at the plant that could possibly cause an issue, so some sort of maintenance work. There's communication that goes out to the public, and so to that group that have registered their interest. So I think there has been an improvement, and I do believe people see that we are working towards a situation of trying to improve the situation that we're in at the moment.
Thank you, Bruce. And just one further question in terms of updates. Any further word on tracking down the petrochemical culprit?
Very difficult to pinpoint something that may have been put into the trade waste network at one point, and we find out about it a day or two later. Certainly the work that the trade waste team have done has been very helpful in terms of raising awareness within Seaview about the problem, and so they are tracking a couple of strong leads, but it's very difficult to be able to absolutely say that it was you. So they're working with people in a way to ensure that compliance is there in the future. And they've certainly, what's happened is through this work, they've picked up a number of issues with the way maybe people are operating, that they can help them improve that. So that's a positive side of this.
Councillor Mayor Barry and then Councillor Dyer.
Thanks, Bruce. On the leaks, great to hear that we're down to 80, was it 84? Something like that?
76.
Oh, even better. Just wanting to check in on the approach now that we're below that sort of 2-week threshold of keeping on top of the leaks, that we'll continue to try and push that number as low as possible. And will there be a shift in our approach, or what is the thinking, given that we've obviously reached that target maybe a little bit earlier than expected?
So we're working with Wellington Water in terms of the plans that they have in place, because it's going to be relatively straightforward with the resources that are available at the moment to keep that number where it is. But when we move into December, January, February, we have got people going on leave, particularly over the Christmas holiday period, where there's only going to be teams available to deal with emergency situations. So clearly there's going to be a build-up of reported leaks over that time. There's more people around and at home maybe that see the leaks, and the ground is drying out and causing those leaks. So what we're doing is sitting down with Wellington Water to try and work out a bit of a plan on what resourcing is going to be available, particularly in the later part of January and February and March, to keep on top of this, because we know that there's going to be a sudden upsurge and we need to have the resources available to do that. Financially, we've got the resources because that was part of the initial plan, that we would hit it hard to start with, then steady off a bit and hold back money to hit this period. But it's not the money that's the concern to me, it's the people being available to do the work.
Could I ask then, without doing a recommendation, but could we have, basically a plan for those months reported back to this committee for the next round, just to be able to see what that looks like and how it is being managed? Because I think you've certainly hit the issues on the head of where the risk is, and I think we need to put ourselves in the best possible position, because we could be doing all this great work advertising that we've got those leaks way down, but then if we get a backlog of 500 again over those couple of months, that's not going to be good.
We can certainly do that. We'd already said we were going to report that through to audit and risk. So there's a bit of a duplication here. We're reporting some of these things to this committee as well as audit and risk, Hutt Valley Services Committee. There's a bit of an overlap, but happy to report to both committees.
Councillor Dyer, yep.
Yeah, mine was a follow-up to the petrochemical issue. How sure is the team that the issue is in Seaview and not further up the network?
My understanding is that they're very sure that it's in the Seaview area.
Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, I'm just going back to follow up on the Mayor's request. If maybe part of that briefing that comes back to us about a plan for summer could be some of the key messages that we're going to put into our comms this year, whether or not they'll be different from previous years. You mentioned something in your explanation there, Bruce, which every time I go to one of these big water meetings, I learn something new. And at the recent briefing, it was that over summer, the ground conditions not cause but allow for the pipes to break more easily, which is something I didn't know before, which is a reason why you see more leaks over summertime as well. So I think there's still a lot of learning for our community to do as well about certainly what we're doing to keep on top of things and respond to things, but what are some of the basic pressures at play here? Thank you.
All right, this is a noting report, so I'm happy to move that we receive and note this report and its contents. Looking for Councillor Stellinger. Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Stellinger.
Just to really show my appreciation and congratulate Mr. Hodgins and those downstream from him, if I can use the term, Wellington Water and perhaps Viola as well, I imagine, for the progress that's being made, both in terms of the leak reductions, which is fantastic. Hopefully we can hold that pretty well over summer, but also just seeing the extended works that are underway and planned to commence soon at the wastewater treatment plant. I made the comment in another setting that it's almost like a complete refurbishment of that major facility, and to see that happening so quick, I think is excellent. So that's it.
Thank you. Put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. Moving to district licensing matters and amendments to our Code of Practice 2022-2025. Jack Kilty is Democracy Advisor, is going to speak to this item. Anything you want to highlight to us, Jack?
Thank you, Chair. Just noting this report seeks the committee's sign-off on amendments to the District Licensing Committee Code of Practice. On the 1st of June this year, Litigation came into force, requiring changes to the District Licensing Committee's hearing processes. These changes included making changes to better allow for tikanga Māori practices in DLC hearings, taking steps to lessen the formality of the process, and no longer allowing the different parties in a hearing to question each other or offer cross-examination. These changes are reflected in Appendix 1 to the report. The changes made to the Code of Practice have been made to reflect those changes. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from councillors? It sticks in my craw somewhat to move the recommendations on page 23, because while I'm all in favour of increasing our tikanga Māori component to our hearings, the decision by central government to remove the ability of cross-examining in these hearings, I think, is a backward step. Nevertheless, I'm happy to move, well, I will move the recommendations on page 23 that we approve these changes to the Code of Practice. Looking for it. Councillor Dyer is seconded. Discussion, Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, we're just going to reiterate the same points. This might seem a bit familiar to members. We did a submission on this process, and I think the chair did a really good job of arguing why having that extra provision added in is a bad one. The very people in the room that know the good questions to ask the other people are now no longer allowed to be part of that process, which for me is just a backward step when you're trying to get information out of people, but it is what it is.
I mean, just to explain for people who didn't sit in the hearings, what the legislators were mindful of is public objectors being not used to proceedings and potentially being cross-examined by lawyers representing liquor interests. So I know what they were trying to achieve, but I'm not sure it was the right way to go. Anyway, any further discussion? Put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Now we've got 3 temporary road closure matters. The first of them to do with Hutt Valley Motorsport on Port Road. Paul Hewitt, from Head of Transport, is there anything you want to highlight to us, Paul, about these road closures? They're the same, as I understand from the draft agenda meeting, there's no changes from previous years.
No, that's correct, Chair.
Questions, anyone? I'll move that series of recommendations on page 36. Looking for a seconder. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Port Road drags. On page 40 of your agenda.
I'll move it. Happy to move it.
Seconder, Councillor Dyer. Any?
I had a question.
Oh, okay. We've got a question.
Wait till we're going to be somewhere else. Yeah, it was just around the consultation tag. It says the applicant of the event has engaged with the affected businesses by the closure. I know in previous years there's been issues with the businesses around the road closure, not necessarily in the road closure, that have negatively impacted around the marina where people can't get to them anymore or didn't know the road was open. Do you know if they've consulted with the marina, or are they just going to find out about it in the Hutt News?
I haven't got the full list of all the businesses consulted with me, so I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Just quickly, I also thought with the consulting, you did come and speak to Eastbourne as well, the community board, out of a courtesy. So that wasn't mentioned in the paper.
Yeah, that is correct. Verbal update was given to the Eastbourne Community Board as well.
Okay, that's been moved by Mayor Barry, seconded by Councillor Dyer. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Thank you. And the last one, temporary road closure for the Petone Christmas Parade on page 44. Any questions? I'll move those recommendations. Seconder. Deputy Mayor Lewis, thank you. Discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. Right. The micro-mobility program update. Paul is staying where he is. Is there anything in this report that you want to highlight to us, Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a high-level update on where we are at currently with the micro-mobility program, following the approval for the self-funded $7.28 million by Council to progress the micro-mobility program. We did have schemes included in the National Long-Term Program which have not received any additional funding outside of what was originally proposed. Yes, we anticipate hopefully having everything out to tender by February 2025, with construction starting in March of next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I went back and had a look at late last year, I think it was, when the designs came through for approval. They weren't included in the paper today. Just one question based on that, and then a quick comment. The question is that I think it was around November of last year, we were asked by Waka Kotahi to reduce the price of the program by 10%. And we did that by removing some crossings from what was initially proposed. Has there been any thought, now that Waka Kotahi aren't involved in this project at all, to reinstating those amendments that were made? Or are we happy with what we're going ahead with?
Thank you, Councillor. I believe at the time when we were asked to reduce the cost of the micromobility program, the Nainai cycleway was removed in totality at that point to bring the costs down to just the Avalon and Taita programs to be progressed.
It was, but also the notes from back then indicate that I think it was about 4 crossings were removed from Taita in order to help value engineer that one as well. So that's in particular what I'm asking about, the plans for Taita and I guess Avalon. I don't know if any changes were made then at the same time, but whether those changes, those cost-saving changes at the request of Waka Kotahi have been reviewed.
At this point, we'll go back and revisit the designs that were put forward, and we can go back to the original designs. I think the current designs include, for example, a lot of raised crossings, and we need to review, are they still the best way forward under current guidance that we've got, and just revisit those to progress those designs to the full construction drawings.
Thank you. And my final kind of comment is a request, really. It's about the language that we use when we're talking about these programs. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a bit of a backlash against cycleways recently in the media and elsewhere. The title of this, Community Connections, is a bit like the Cross Valley Connections, I think, for me. Cross Valley Connections is more than just a road. This is about more than just pathways. In particular, in this paper, it does use the word cycleways, and we're talking about shared paths, which is something a bit different. But also, this is a package that includes quite a number of new crossings, some speed humps, I think, to calm traffic as well, intersection improvements. So just when we're communicating, particularly with the public about this, if we can be mindful that this is a package of improvements for safety around schools and connections, rather than just, using the cycleway word and getting a lot of criticism from people for that.
Thank you, Paul. Does that extra work that you were talking about in terms of getting the raised crossings looked at again, a little bit surprised that we're not able to go out till tender till February next year, when I kind of thought this thing was pretty much ready to go. We've done all the consultation. It seems quite a time period.
The designs are all they're pretty much at detailed design. We just need to get them reviewed, pushed through to the full construction drawings. We thought it would be a worthwhile exercise because the consultation was done last year, just to revisit the consultation to make sure we're on the right track, nothing's changed out there. And then out to tender, obviously allowing for the Christmas period as well, but we expect to be well underway by February of next year.
Okay, thank you. I'll move that we receive and note this report and note that the micromobility program, Community Connections, Avalon Taita Designs for approval was considered by our committee on 23 November, and note the report micromobility was considered by the long-term plan annual plan subcommittee on 26th of August and recommended the approval of 7.28 million unsubsidised budget over that 3-year period be spent. So I'm happy to move that. Looking for a seconder. Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, I was going to make the exact same points as Councillor Mitchell around some of the language in the paper with references to cycleway. None of this is a cycleway. It's all shared pathways, and in some places it's actually turning currently nothing into a pathway that doesn't currently exist. So it's not even turning a current footpath into a shared pathway. It's literally putting in a new pathway where there's currently just grass. So we are talking some big figures, and as Councillor Mitchell mentioned, there's been a bit of backlash against cycleways. This isn't a cycleway. This is a shared pathway, so people can actually get down onto the riverbank shared pathway. checking I'm using the right language. And I also thought it would have been useful to have the actual maps and the plans attached as an appendix for this one. I know the design's been refined a few times. Yeah, I know they're in the November paper, but I had the impression that we had tweaked things slightly to try and get it under a cost cap for NZTA. So yeah, I think maybe if this goes to full council, if it could have the appendix of the report that's referenced in there, I think it'd be quite useful.
Thank you. I did raise this at the regular meeting of the Hutt Cycling Network the other day, asking them for their view of whether this was the right way to go, or to sort of save our gunpowder for another cycleway, which perhaps might be more bang for buck. But their view, a unanimous view, including from the person who spoke in the public comment today, was that we should get some runs on the board and that these projects should get the nod. So there's some comfort to councillors. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thanks. Retrospective approval for council submission on the building, earthquake-prone buildings, deadlines and other matters amendment bill. What a mouthful. Page 52 of the agenda. Richard Barton, Head of Building Control, is here to speak to this item. Anything that you want to add to the report, Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, thank you. I think the report is self-explanatory, and was really supplementary to the Thai to Ara. Hopefully I haven't done that name too much injustice. It's supplementary to that. It's a very good, solid report, and so difficult to add much substance further to that. Thanks.
It was a good report. Questions, councillors? I'll move that we receive and note the submission on the building, the amendment bill attached as Appendix 1, and retrospectively approve council submission attached as Appendix 2 to the report. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Stellinger. A discussion. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment, and really it's to acknowledge that submission by Taituara. It was a really good submission, and one thing that caught my eye in there was the other matters part of the bill, which was to do with swimming pool inspections. And interesting to note their reluctance from compliant pool owners to have their pools subjected to ongoing inspections by council. And then later in our same agenda papers read that of 83 pool compliance decisions made in the last period, more than half, 60% of pools were not compliant. And just to commend Taituara for taking a safety first approach to do with swimming pools.
Thank you. Recommendations have been moved and seconded. I'll put those. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. We're on to regulatory matters. We've got Tim Johnson. Alison's out of town at the moment, but Tim Johnson, Head of Planning, is available to speak to the item. If there's anything you want to highlight, Tim. And I know we've got Duncan from Animal Control here too.
Yeah, certainly no update from me, and I'll just look to Richard. Richard does, no update from Richard, and Duncan, no update from your side. So, no, happy to take the report as read.
Questions, councillors? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. It's just into the table 5 on the updated notable consents, and just was there any change to the one on the Esplanade, this billboard sign? Was it downsized at all, or did it go in as big as it is?
Yeah, no, consent has been granted for the billboard as per the application. So it's a double-sided billboard that is the same size as they applied for. That has now been approved.
Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, my question was regarding the parking fee changes that have come from the government. Just wondering how, or if we're going to let the public know about these changes. Some of them are quite significant. They're happening on the 1st of October, which is the same day our paid parking kicks in Petone. It may seem like this is just a big council conspiracy to get more money in the doors when it's the government changing these. While we kind of agree with it, it's irrelevant, but how we can let the public know about these changes, because they are quite significant.
To Duncan, but he might not be aware of that, or even if John is online, might be more the one for that.
Kia ora koutou. Sorry, I had to find the controls. In terms of the parking, I think we need to be very clear when we publicise the changes, which ones are us, which ones the council have approved the implementation of, and then which ones are central government directed.
So just to follow up on my question is like, how are we going to do a big, is there a comms plan about how we're going to communicate this to the public that in 3 weeks it's going to be very expensive to park in a disabled car park, for instance?
So we'll need to come back to you. I certainly know with the Pita-only paid parking, we do have quite a rollout plan that will be coming out. So in terms of this one, we'll just need to make sure the teams and our comms teams are all over this. So don't worry, it will certainly get done.
A slightly related question, John, and I probably should have asked beforehand, but just in case you know the answer to this, what is our attitude to, because I notice it's one of the fines that has increased quite significantly, parking on a footpath. Do our wardens have any discretion in that regard on narrow roads? Or is it black and white?
So I could probably answer that, Mr. Chair. It is black and white. It's covered under Land Transport Act that it's illegal to park a vehicle. It's an absolute. There's no margin for parking a vehicle, whether it's slightly tyres up or fully over. It's prohibited.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mitchell had a question too.
Yeah, I was just going to draw attention to the most significant change, which has had some quite good media coverage already, which is about parking in disabled car parks, mobility parks, and just whether we could do some proactive comms around that and how people go about getting a pass if they need to get a pass or someone in their whānau does. We don't want kind of people who think they're eligible to park in there or should be, not knowing that they need that pass and then getting slapped with a $750 fine. I just wonder if we could work in with our disability sector, perhaps, to do some proactive comms around that one, and calling on people not to do it, of course, in advance of 1st of October when the fine is going up very substantially.
Yes, I'd agree with that. It's the CS Disability which run the licensing scheme. They've got a very good information. It'll probably be good for us to just point people in that direction as they've got the best information on their website.
Okay, Councillor Stellinger.
Yes, thank you. Just wondering if there's any update. I know we said there's no updates, but with the consent processing, both in the resource consenting and building consenting, so we've got the figures through to July. Just want a bit of a feel for how August went. I know we had that big rush in resource consents in particular a bit earlier on, and how that's going.
Yeah, certainly the following 2 months after that rush have been quite low. Off the top of my head, the next month was 17 after received 110, and the following month was, I think, 22. So we were expecting the rush, but we were also expecting to slow down. I think the interesting thing will be to track that through to the end of the year, and in particular, we normally get a Christmas rush. I'll be interested to see how that, whether that comes about given the current circumstances. Is that sufficient for?
Yeah, but also the processing of those consents. Is it now you're kind of over the hump in terms of the processing? And
I wouldn't say we're over the hump. There's already been a little bit of a sort of, our working days have jumped up slightly, but only to 21 days. We're certainly managing it. It's certainly feeling under control, but there is an impact in terms of working days and the need for us to use consultants. But that was all part of our strategy to how to manage that workload. And the other thing to mention is we do have a number of them that have been put on hold at the request of the applicant. In other words, they are not in a significant rush for that consent to be processed. So I think all echoing the current climate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just sort of reiterating my points I kind of made during questioning around those parking increase fees. I do think that we need to, I'm reassured by John, but do need to make sure we don't drop the ball on this. We're less than 3 weeks away from these significant changes at a time when people are feeling significant cost pressures and rate increases and insurance increases and everything increases. We need to make sure we're communicating this really well, where the changes have come from, how much of that revenue we're getting, how much goes to the government. I only just learnt last week that 50% of all our WAFs go straight to the government. I was led to believe before it was 100%, but actually we make half of that. There'll be some significant changes here, and at the moment I've seen nothing public about it, and it's 2.5 weeks away. So keen to see what we can do in this space, noting it's happening around the country, but we could definitely be leading the pack on informing residents about these changes.
Thanks for that. We seem to have moved seamlessly from questions to comments, but that's fine. Mayor Barry.
Look, I know that our Gen Z are aware of this, and to be honest, I think the there needs to be some national media on it because every council's in the exact same position. But I think some basic communications from our end makes sense as well, but I wouldn't want us to go OTT on it because it is a national-wide change. But there needs to be some good communication, I agree. So I can see what they're doing in that space and pass that on to us.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Can I just ask the question around when we ticket for infringements of outstanding warrant of fitness and things like that, that's not part of this, is that separate?
Sorry, so building warrant of fitnesses? You're talking about building warrant of fitnesses? Cars, sorry.
Vehicles, yeah.
Councillor's asking whether I think she's asking whether the fine for failure to display a warrant is similarly increased to some of these other fee increases.
As far as I'm aware, they're not. I'm looking at the changes in schedule and they don't seem to be included. I'm not aware that they've gone up. It just needs to be around parking. And tow fees.
I move that we receive and note this information. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Mitchell, thank you. We've had some comment. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Moving to the Economy and Development Director's report. John, is there anything that you want to raise with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So no, I'll just take the paper as read, but just quickly noting that we've put in a little piece around the time of use schemes. So that is the direction that the government are looking at, that we will need to identify some roads where that will be applicable. If we're looking at more from a regional perspective, and I think that's something that we'll need to do, we can probably expect that State Highway 2 at certain times of the day would be or could be one of those roads that might have charging, say, between sort of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 4 and 6 kind of thing. So that's the sort of thing that the government's starting to look at. As I was saying, we will need to assess these. Now, if we've got with Cross Valley Connections, for example, when that link road's done and the government has signalled that may be tolled, so we would then need to look at, anytime you've got a road that's tolled, you've got to have a free alternative. So the Esplanade, for example, if that's parallel with Cross Valley, you couldn't go with a charge on the Esplanade because that's the free version of the road, a couple of kilometres across. So those are things we're going to have to look through. Obviously, we'll be working really closely with you and getting your views early on when the call comes out for us to start looking at that. There is one thing here that is a little bit different than some of the other schemes that have been proposed, and that is there's potentially some of the revenue for that could be invested back into the city where that is. So I just wanted to float that. It'll be next year before we hear anything more, but it is something reasonably large looming on the horizon. Riverlink, just noting, and you'll be aware from last week from the NLTP announcement that the CityLink Bridge didn't get funding, so we're still working through funding options for that. The costs for the program will be again working through the overall cost for those as we go through. And that's probably Eastern Hutt Road's the only other thing that I'll mention. So that is one of the projects that got funding in the NLTP. So the two main high risk sections north of Stokes Valley Roundabout, where the concrete barriers are on the hillside, and where and directly opposite that, the next two sites. So we'll be coming back with further information on those. But really good to see that we've got council's input in the LTP has been matched by Waka Kotahi, so we can proceed with those two high-risk sites. So open to any questions, Chair.
Thank you, John. Just a quick one before Councillor Mitchell asks his question. Is it your intention to give us a briefing on the NLTP once you've done some analysis and how else our other proposals have been affected, badly or otherwise?
Yes, absolutely. So at the LTP AP meeting in November, that we will be briefing. So, for example, maintenance and renewals, for example, we have not got what we put in, mind you, there's a lot of money for potholes, but in terms of renewals and those sorts of things, there isn't a whole lot of funding there. So we are working through what that looks like, and we'll come back for your advice and decision, because there need to be further levels of service discussions around what's achievable for the money that's been that we've got. So absolutely, I mean, road safety, we've got a lot less than what we expected. There is, and just noting, so going back a couple of papers, but just with the micromobility, with the speed humps and things, and raised pedestrian crossings, there is no money for those in the next 3 years. There is money to take them out, but not put them in. So that is something that we'll need to tweak when we look at the design. If council is actually paying for, we can still do these as council. I mean, there's still that ability, but they won't qualify for any maintenance funding because they don't align with the new direction in the government, if you like.
Crazy stuff. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just coming back to congestion charging, John. My understanding was that the legislation was an enabling legislation, particularly it was Auckland City Council who had been asking for the ability to impose congestion charging. But the way you described it sounded like there might be more of an expectation or obligation on all councils, or all big urban councils, I guess, in particular, to take a look at it and introduce it if it's deemed necessary. Is that kind of your take on it for the Wellington region, that we are obligated to take a look at that and to implement something?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Yes, absolutely. And there's been talk of that for quite a while, and the gantries that were actually built as part of the smart motorway, we're looking ahead to that as well, particularly coming in on State Highway 1 and 2 and into Wellington. So we'd be second cab off the rank after Auckland, or may need to do it at a similar time, given the congestion issues and the pressure that's put on in Wellington during the weeks. So, yep, that is something we'll need to do. So.
Okay, I'm going to move that we receive and note this report. Looking for a seconder. Thank you. Can I just say, John, it's great to have this report. It's a relatively new feature of Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meetings, but there's some great information in there, so congratulations. Any further discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. We're on to our forward programme on page 92 of the agenda. Anyone got any questions on that forward programme? I move that we receive and note that programme. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Mitchell, thank you. No, any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare that carried. Questions? I have received no questions. Please join me in our closing karakia shortly on your screens. Mino tātou, unahia, unahia, unahia te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, e te ara takatū. Koia rā e rongo, whaka irihia aki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia.